Okay, I think it's okay for us to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you for coming to an afternoon training on your weekend. As you know, we are now heading into the bulk of our work, which is the scheduling process. As I previously mentioned, this training will solely be on scheduling. I will go through the step-by-step process. So after each step, I'll go ahead and pause for any questions in regards to that task that we're covering. As you all know, NorCal has released our preliminary schedules, and the communications process has been open, and we can go ahead and begin with that step. Is there any questions in regards to the steps that we had been given prior to the communication process opening? So prior to communications opening, we did receive our preliminary schedules. And in one of the communications that I had sent, um, for preliminary schedules, NorCal provided us with the public access link to our schedule. So as you're going through and updating your coach's shared document, as well as adding the placeholders in TeamSnap, this public access to the calendar is a very good resource, as you don't need to enter Got Sport to view your full schedule. You're able to just access this public view and then easily transfer the information. So in order to find your schedule, you'll just input your name as shown in your through Got Sport. So we'll just go ahead and use the 2016 Boys Red team. And as I said, this will populate your full schedule for fall. And then all of the teams should have been assigned a time slot for game days. And all of the team managers for your coach should have started inputting all of the preliminary schedules into the shared doc. If there's no questions in regards to setting up your coach's schedule and getting that organized, we can just go ahead and move into the communication process. So in order to communicate with your opponents, you'll want to enter Got Sport through your login. When you enter Got Sport, it will take you directly to your dashboard where you're able to see your US club requirements. In order to access your matches, you'll want to go to where it says Team Management, and then you'll go down to where it says Matches. If you're helping with multiple clubs or teams, you'll want to make sure you select the correct team that you're working on. I will just go ahead and select this team, and then you'll want to select the current event that we're working on. So right now we're currently working on Fall League, and then when State Cup does open, you will also be able to select that event. But it's easier to just work on one event at a time. So right now we're working on Fall League. Let me just kind of go back and show you what the event would look like for most of your teams. So it would show as 24-25 NorCal Premier Fall League. Unless your team is in NPL, then it would show as 24-25 NorCal Premier NPL. So you'll select the team and the event that you're working in, and this will populate your matches. And again, this is a similar view to the public access schedule. just, again, it's easier to look at the schedule from the public access versus trying to maneuver through the site. In order to communicate with your opponent, you'll go to where this dialog bubble is, and you'll click on that. And then when you click on New Message, you're able to input a message to your opponents. And when you click Save, this will then populate an email to all of the team officials for your team and to the away team. So for that very initial conversation, you'll either want to let your opponents know what your preferred kickoff times are, or if you notice that there is a conflict in your coach's schedule, let's say that there is a tournament that the team is one of your coach's teams is participating in, or for the younger age groups who are participating in State Cup towards the later of the season, there will be NorCal hosted State Cup events, which is those kind of like tournament weekends where you go out to like Manteca or like Rancho Cordova for State Cup. And so those NorCal hosted events, you aren't able to switch around. So you'll want to go ahead and make those notations for what those dates will be. And within the template that's provided for the coach's shared doc, I do have the NorCal Premier calendar. So you're able to go ahead and take a look at when those NorCal hosted events are for State Cup and mark them in your calendar. And those events are highlighted in yellow. The NorCal Fall League dates, as well as the group stage for State Cup, do have some flexibility. So if you've seen in your calendar, like your fall games, all are listed on Saturdays. However, if there is any sort of scheduling conflict, you are able to move them to Sundays or any other dates that are available in your coach's schedule. Same thing for State Cup. Those first rounds that are highlighted in green, you do have the flexibility to move them off of their preliminary dates if you find that there is conflicts in your schedule. And for State Cup, they tend to provide you with a deadline. So you basically just need to make sure that all your State Cup games are finished by a certain date. So there is flexibility with both schedules. Any questions so far? Okay.
Hi, Evelyn. I have a question. I'm wondering, where do we see about field availability?
Okay, I actually will get to that when we move over to the home scheduling process.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No worries. So at this time, for the majority of the
I'm
teams,
sorry.
oh yes.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Sorry. This is Alice. I was trying to unmute. I don't think that my team has any state cup um weekends. I just wanted to make sure I looked on Got Sport and there's nothing in the spreadsheet I was using.
Did your
For
team register for State Cup?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. So if your team didn't register for State Cup, then you won't have to
Yeah.
worry about adding those dates. I would just say double check with your coach's other teams to see if they have registered for State Cup. That way you can still put
Okay.
those dates in the calendar so that there won't be any sort of conflicts later in the season.
Okay. And I don't see it on the other teams list that they put into our shared spreadsheet, but I'll double check.
Yes, the
Okay.
state cup schedule has not yet been released.
Oh,
It
okay.
will probably be another 2 weeks. I think they're kind of still working on the brackets. And so typically with the scheduling season, especially with fall, they tend to release the schedules in phases. So usually NorCal will release the NPL schedules first, and then the rest of Fall League for all of the other teams. And then State Cup is the last event that they will release during the scheduling process. So it tends to come in phases to make that scheduling um, process a bit easier, that we're able to kind of focus on one event at a time versus having all of it going at the same time. And so kind of just backtracking again with your coaches shared doc, again, they should have assigned each team to a specific time slot for game days. And so, for example, if you were scheduled for or you were assigned the early AM, you would want to make sure that you request an 8 AM or a 9 AM kickoff from your opponent. And then for the late PM, you would want to secure the latest time slot possible. So typically that's 5 p.m. Or 4 p.m., unless they do have permits to play under the lights, and then that can be pushed back further. And the reason for these end cap teams to request the earliest and the latest time slots is so that it stretches your coach's day in order to prevent as much overlap as possible for them to be at the majority of each of your games. And so when you're requesting from your opponents, you'll want to send a message to both home and away teams, just because for your away team or away games, you'll want to know as quickly as possible if your opponent can accommodate your requests for, let's say you are assigned the early AM um, time slot, then you would want to make sure and see if they can accommodate like an 8 AM or 9 AM kickoff. And a lot of times our opponents are very accommodating and will be able to provide us with our preferred kickoff times. Other times there may be an issue with their field permits. And so they will immediately let you know, oh, unfortunately, we don't have any fields available in the morning, but our earliest kickoff time is 11 a.m. And in that case, you're able to go back into your coach's shared doc and make a notation to let the other team managers know that there is a scheduling conflict for that given date, and for them to work um, to kind of keep that in mind when they're going through their scheduling process to try to avoid a conflict. The best way to notify your other team managers as you guys are all going through the scheduling process at the same time is to go ahead and create a comment where you're able to add them to the sheet and then let them know of the conflict and then send a comment. And then this will then prompt an email to let them know that there has been comments left in the shared document, and then they're able to come back and take a look at um, at what's going on with the scheduling process. Here, my co-team manager, since it's just two of us, she was able to make the notations um, towards the side instead of making comments, since it's just two schedules we're working on. But typically when there's three, let me kind of show you what that would look like. So here is kind of an example of where I made a comment and I let them know, and then they were able to work around the scheduling conflict. And I find this to be the easiest way to make comments or notes in the shared doc, just because if you're trying to send text messages about different reschedules or different conflicts, as well as different email threads, it tends to get all mixed up, especially in your inbox when you're receiving a bunch of Got Sport comments from your opponents. It's just easier to kind of put everything into the shared doc, where it's just housed and organized, and then you're just able to kind of review everything. So I'm just going to kind of click through examples here. So this team was assigned an early AM time slot, so they went ahead and asked for a kickoff between 8 and 10 a.m. And their opponents were able to confirm that that would work for them. And so for this home game, they would proceed as both of them have confirmed. Again, if you know that a game may have a conflict due to a tournament or your coach is unavailable, you're able to go ahead and just make that first initial conversation, letting them know that you do have a conflict, and provide them with any available dates that you see in your coach's shared doc. Again, you'll want to make that comment noting that this game we're looking to reschedule at these available dates. And then your coach's other team managers will just go ahead and look to avoid any conflicts. So as I mentioned, for the away games, we don't necessarily have any say in how they schedule the games. We do provide them with what we prefer, and it's essentially up to them if they're able to accommodate the request or not. For our home games, we will want to make sure that we get all of our home games confirmed. And then once all of our home games are confirmed and Jack London has opened our home scheduling process, then we would take all of our confirmed games, our confirmed games, and then submit a request for home fields. So Jack London will most likely open up the game request forms probably sometime next week. And that's so that they can ensure that we do go through the communication process with our opponents and confirm all of our game dates and possible kickoff times before we make those requests. And that's so that we can minimize minimize the amount of game request errors that can be made. So going in, or is there any questions so far in the communications and getting the games confirmed?
Evelyn, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure.
My coach Gabe has 4 teams.
Yes.
And so it looks like one of his 4 teams is doing State Cup, and our team is not. And so on the weekends when they're doing State Cup, can we still schedule matches on the Saturday because the State Cup matches are Sunday, or does that mean the whole weekend is unavailable because he'll be traveling with the team?
No. So the only dates that he would most likely be unavailable would be the dates in yellow. And so I would just go ahead and mark those weekends.
Okay, so the 19th to 2nd and the 9th. And then so I just wanted to ask a clarifying question about the away process. So I've already gotten a couple of messages from other teams saying, we'd like to schedule this game at this time. And it's not the time block, we were assigned the last time block of the day for Gabe as our preferred. So, but so I can reply back and say, it would be great if it's later, but if they say it's at this time, we say, sounds good, see you then.
Yeah, you would just go ahead. If there is no flexibility on their end, then it would have to be played as is. And you would just mark in your coach's shared doc, letting the other team managers know that unfortunately our opponent can't play this game as within the time slot that we're assigned. They will most likely book this game at whatever time they had provided you with. But just go ahead and check in with your opponents. Definitely send them a follow-up message and just say, hey, is it possible to play at this time slot, because our coach has 4 teams and this is what he has available for our team. And then they'll just go ahead and let you know. And then you'll just, like I said, mark, if they can't accommodate, then you would just mark that in your coach's shared doc.
Okay, sounds good.
Yes.
Evelyn, this is Alice. I had another couple questions. So at this point, I have a time slot of 8 to 11 or time frame. And it sounds like I'm not taking into account field availability or anything like that into my scheduling inquiries of the other teams at this point. Is that correct? Like the field reservations come later.
Yes. So right now
Okay.
we're just confirming our dates
Yeah.
and possible kickoff times. And
Okay.
then once we have that confirmed, then we'll move into the home scheduling process, where we do have the ability to select multiple field options. And then I guess I can, if there's no more questions in regards to communications and getting schedules confirmed, I'll go ahead and move on to that home scheduling process.
Okay. Well, just sorry, one more question. So am I reaching out also to, it sounds like the first priority is home games. And then am I also reaching out initially to away games? Like I can initiate the conversation when we're playing
Yeah.
away also.
Yeah, you'll definitely want to initiate the
Just
conversation as
everybody.
quickly as possible, just
Okay.
so that if they can't accommodate your assigned time slot, then you can make those notations in your coach's shared doc so that the other team managers know to try to avoid that scheduling conflict.
Okay.
Of course, when we're kind of going through the scheduling process, especially kind of taking into account those state cup dates where it's NorCal hosted and we don't have the flexibility to move games around. And you may have games on these last few weekends that you're not able to shift to different dates. And so this is where it's very important for our assistant coaches to go through their credentialing process in order to get their US club pass. So if there are any conflicts where the coach does have to show up late for a game or needs to leave early, our assistant coaches can fill in for our coach. And then for the state cup weekends where they will be away, if there are any teams that aren't participating in state cup for those weekends and they have to play a regular league game in order to finish off their season, then the assistant coach can go ahead and fill in. And then going into the home scheduling process. So right now you received an email from me that stated that we are in the communication process. Once Jack London is ready for us to submit our home game requests. I will, my apologies, I'm stumbling on my words. I will go ahead and send another email with the step-by-step instructions, similar to the ones that you have been receiving. So in one of the communications I sent, the one from 7/17, let me kind of, sorry, I have so many windows open already. That message had the Sport Links team officials registration. So you'll want to go ahead and register as a team official for this season. So let me go ahead and open that up. And so if you already have an account within SportLinks, you'll just sign in and then submit the registration. If you do not have a SportLinks account, it will ask you to create an account, and then you can proceed with the registration. So you'll just go through, and then here you'll want to add all of the teams that you are associated to. So for Clippers, it's CFC, and then you can search by that and then select all of the teams that you are affiliated to. You'll go ahead and select your role. And then actually, let me go back, and then you can add additional teams if you are also helping with those teams. For Piedmont, it's PSC. I don't think I have any Alameda team managers here. Let me know if I'm wrong. But then you'll just go ahead and select your team and then also select your role. So make sure that when you're going through the team information that you provide all of the, or you click on all of the teams that you're helping with. And then you just click through, submit. It'll process your registration. Let's see. Oh, that's because I already submitted a registration. So you can only submit one registration per season. And so that's why we ask you to go ahead and select all of the teams that you're affiliated to, so that there aren't any errors later. Once you log in, this is what your landing page will look like. Typically, announcements from Jack London would include rain out cancellations. So any announcements regarding rainouts, what fields are open and closed, will be provided here. They also added the registration link for team officials who have not yet registered and have access to SportLinks. So in order to access your team page, you'll find your team name listed in this top menu bar. If you have multiple teams, it will provide you with a drop down, and then you can select the team. For rosters, you don't have to worry about team officials and players being added here. This platform is solely for field and referee assignments. Anything that has to do with your player roster is within Got Sport. So again, Sport Links is just solely for field reservations and referee assignments.
Evelyn, I'm sorry, this is Alice. I don't see that email, but maybe will you resend it when that piece of the scheduling opens?
So actually, all of my team managers' memos are located within the media folder of both the Clippers and Piedmont team managers and coaches team snap. And so when you go to media, you'll just make sure it's under files, and there's a team managers memo folder. So every single memo that I've sent out is within here.
It's in Team Snap.
Yes. And so you would be looking for the July 17th memo. And that one, it's the
Sorry,
sport.
so I go to the Highlander team managers team snap,
Mhm.
and it's where?
under, sorry, let me go back, media.
Are you showing that on? I don't.
Yeah.
Is
So
it in the app?
if you're using the app on the phone,
Yeah.
I typically I use my laptop and go to the web
Okay.
page. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I've ever logged in on my computer. I'll try to figure out how to
Okay.
get it up there.
Kind of
Okay.
looking through the app right now, how to access the media.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see it as an option, but
And of course,
I think I've only ever accessed TeamSnap on the app.
okay.
I don't know.
Actually, if you look at the top menu,
Uh-huh.
there's the plus sign, and then next to the plus sign are 3 dots.
Yeah.
Okay, I think if you click there, oh yes.
Oh,
So if you
files.
click there, files, and then if
Oh, I
you
see
go
it.
down
Okay.
to the team manager's memo, the
Okay,
TM
great.
memos.
Okay,
And then
thank
it's
you.
under July 7th.
7/17.
Yeah,
Okay, I see that. Okay, thank you.
no worries.
Evelyn, can you quickly show us on Gotsport how to access the TeamSnap files on the desktop? I've also been just using my phone to
Okay.
use TeamSnap.
Okay, for the team managers, you'll go to obviously the team managers and coaches team snap page, and then to the right there is a media tab.
And just to back up, is for the TeamSnap page, it's a different site than system.gotsport. I see that it says go.teamsnap.com.
Yeah, this is just the team snap that we use for club communications. So instead of utilizing team snap through the app, I typically will just go to the website, because you can either access it through the website or through the app on your phone. And so when you go through the URL, you'll go to where it says media, and then the media or the TM memos is where all of my communications have been. So whenever I send those long, lengthy emails, this is easier than trying to like look back through your inbox to try to find those messages. You can just come back into the media folder and find those memos a lot easier. Any other questions in regards to finding the memos, or we're good? Okay. So going back into Sport Links, again, from your landing page, you'll go to the top menu bar, find your team name, and then click on that team name. And then in order to access the game requests, you'll go down to where it says game request in this left side menu, and then you'll be able to open a new game request. So for your home games, you'll go ahead and select the date that you and your opponents had confirmed. And then you'll be able to add fields and time slots. So let me kind of also backtrack. When we go through the home scheduling process, I will provide you with the step-by-step email. And then in that email, I will also provide you with a list of our home fields, as well as Jack London age-appropriate fields that you can select from. And so here, I'm just going to select on a few fields. So let's say I do have that early AM time slot. So for this field, the earliest is 9:30. I can pick an alternative. Alameda, they have an 8 AM. And then I can pick another alternative. Beach at 9:10. Another option is that you can go ahead and select select 3 fields with the same time slot, if it is available. So for here, I selected 3 different kickoff times that fall within my early AM time slot that I was assigned and that my opponents had confirmed to play within. Some team managers will just go ahead. Let me just kind of erase some of these. And let's say I'm going to go ahead and select all 9:10 because my opponent had asked if it could just be a 9 AM kickoff, if possible. So just go ahead and select all those options. I selected 3 different field options for 9:10, which is the closest kickoff to the 9 o'clock that they had requested. If your opponents weren't very specific with a kickoff time, they said, yeah, sure, we can play anytime between 8 and 10 that you had requested, then it's best to just go ahead and select 3 different time slots within or 3 different kickoff times within your preferred time slot. For the away team, you'll go ahead and just click from another club. You'll go ahead and create a new team if it is not a team that you've played against and is already listed in the system. You'll input the team name by just highlighting the team from the GOT Sport matches and then adding them here. You don't need to worry about adding coaching contacts or team contacts as our opponents don't typically have access to sport links. Unless they are obviously a Jack London club, which are Piedmont, Montclair, or apologies, Clippers, Oakland Soccer Club, Alameda Soccer Club, and EBU. They do have access to sport links. So when we do submit game requests with their team names, sometimes they do populate to their game lists. When you guys are kind of looking at your preliminary schedule, and you recognize that, let's say your coach has all home games listed for a particular date, then you can make that notation in your game request and say, Coach Dan has all home games. Can we try to schedule for back-to-back games? And then if they're all roughly the same age group, then you can just ask for possibly the same field or adjacent fields. The same field. And then the scheduler will know to kind of take a look at all of your coach's games for that day and try to put them back to back, which then helps with the coach's game day logistics for that day, where having them back to back simplifies their schedule, and then it obviously prevents any overlaps. Once you submit the game request, it will populate to the game request page. And so you will be able to see all of the different games that you have requested. You want to make sure that you only request submit one request for one game day. So for, let's say, this August 17th, you'll want to make sure that you just submit one, and you have the option to select 3 different fields and time slots. Let's say you do find that your game request has an error. You realize that this game, you were supposed to actually select August 18th instead of the 17th. What you'll want to do is send an email to the Jack London admin and let them know that there was an error, and that this request needs to be deleted. And so then you'll also send the game request ID, so that they'll easily find that game request and remove it from the system. And then once they remove it from the system, you can go ahead and submit a new game request. And obviously all the game requests you select or submit are the confirmed games, the confirmed home games on your schedule. The reason why we want to make sure that we go through our game requests and make sure there aren't any errors, is because the schedulers don't necessarily see if there are errors made. They won't realize that, like, oh, this 2017 Boys Red team submitted 5 game requests on August 7th for the same game. So we just have to make sure that we are double checking our game list, and that if there are requests that need to be deleted because of errors, that they are done so, just so that these games that were submitted in error, or game requests that are submitted in error, don't actually turn into games within our schedule. We've had the issue in the past where team managers will submit multiple requests for the same day because they didn't select multiple options in one request. And when the schedules were published, all those requests were published as games. And then later there were issues where referees would sign up for these games that were created in error, and then they would show up to the field, and obviously it would be a no-show. And those referees could have gone to different games that needed referees. So we just have to make sure that our requests are submitted correctly. Once all of your requests are submitted, the Jack London schedulers will go through and work on the field utilization and place all of the games to into the time slots on all of the fields. What they will do, let's say you did submit a game request and none of your options were available, field options. What they'll go ahead and do is that they'll look at the full Jack London field list, and they'll typically take one of your 3 kickoff times that you have provided and see where they can place you onto other Jack London age appropriate fields. So typically they're very good at keeping your requests at the time slots or the kickoff times that you have requested. So if they don't necessarily have a field that you've asked in the options, they will have another Jack London field that's age appropriate to provide you. There are very rare cases where there are no fields at no time slots that you have requested. And in that event, they would deny your request. Typically, they may send a confirmation email to let you know that it was denied. And then in the event that it does get denied, you can just go ahead and come back into Sport and send a message to your opponent to let them know, unfortunately, for this date, we aren't able to field the game as we had confirmed. Can you host? And then what will happen is that they'll go back to their scheduler to see if they are able to host it at the time that you guys had confirmed. If they're able to, you would then send an email to NorCal asking them to swap the hosting team, which will then let your opponent update the game details. They may come back and say, unfortunately, we don't have any fields available. And so then that will mean for you to have to reschedule the game for a different date. If that does happen, you would again make that notation in your coach's shared doc, letting them know we couldn't get a field as we had hoped. We're looking to move this game to a different date. And then again, you're looking at any availability on your coach's schedule to offer as a reschedule option to your opponents. Any questions in regards to that information?
Yeah, hey, this is Alice again. It seems like in the examples you're giving for scheduling that when you go to schedule the field, you're not necessarily able to try to select, 3 different field options at 8:30. You're selecting, you sort of have a range of times, kickoff times within, like 9 to 11 or 8 to 10 or something like that. So, because I was under the impression that I should like send an email to the other team and say, hey, we'd like an 8:30 a.m. kickoff time or a 9 a.m. kickoff time.
So,
But then,
mhm.
yeah, but then the fields seem to be, not that exact. There's not a number of fields at that exact time necessarily.
Yes. So typically when we are providing our opponents with our preferred kickoff times, a lot of times, majority of the fields for us and our opponents, we may not exactly have like an 8:30 or a 9 o'clock, but opponents do know that those are kind of the proposed time slots and that they're able to look at kickoff times that are fairly close to what we've requested. And same
Okay.
thing for our opponents, that they may request a 9 o'clock, but they understand that there might not exactly be a 9 a.m. kickoff on our
Yeah.
fields, and that there is a bit of leeway
Okay.
for the
So,
start of that kickoff time.
okay. So
So
it's
as long
better to
as we're
sort of
not
have
like,
yeah. So it's better to have an exact time you've sort of agreed on, and then you kind of go from that, plus or minus 30 minutes on either side if
yeah,
you can.
yes.
Okay.
Tina, I
All
saw
right,
that you
thanks.
unmuted. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just thinking I did the scheduling for Castro Valley last year. And we didn't use the Sport Links
Yeah. You guys
site.
typically use a just a document because you guys aren't working with a whole network of fields. It's just solely Castro Valley fields. So your process is a little bit different. It's similar to AFC, where you guys just utilize a master game schedule Excel sheet where you guys can look at it and then go ahead and plug in or request via email to your scheduler.
Gotcha. So I guess I'm just kind of following up with what Alice was questioning. So when we are communicating on Got Sport with the other teams, the time that we're suggesting there is not going to be the actual time on the Sport Links website, correct?
Correct. So
Okay.
like for here, we this team provided them with basically that time slot for that day. So it gives you a bigger range of kickoff times. The opponent here said, oh, 9 a.m. would be ideal, but obviously there might not necessarily be a 9 a.m. kickoff. And so they understand that it will still fall within that range.
Can I ask a question? Is there any way that we would be able to see field availability before we communicate with the other teams, just so we have like an idea? Say, you know, we have the off the top of my head, I think we've got the 11 to 1 time slot, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
So if I wanted to, could I just hop on to Sportlinks, see what's available during that time of day, and then go back and communicate and say, hey, we have an 11:30 available, can you guys do that? Or does that not work?
Um, Typically, that is a good question. I know that there is a public schedule link. However,
Just because I'm thinking, like, last year when I did it for Cast Rally, I know you said we only had one team, which or one field. But it was easy to kind of go back and look at, okay, what's available before I really kind of go out there and say, hey, we can do either 8:30 or 9:30. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Versus saying, hey, we have anything between 8 and 11, but it just seems kind of um what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of vague for them.
yeah.
You know, it would be easier, I think, to see what's available before we say we have, this time and this time available for us, if that works for you.
I'm trying to see if I can find. In the past, they used to have a um a public link schedule. However, when you look at that public link, it doesn't necessarily show you availability. It just kind of shows you what's already been taken. So let's see.
Like, my question is, if I'm trying to schedule a game, and I know that my first choice is going to be the what is it, the Edna Brewer field? Is that what it is?
Okay, yes.
Right. So if I say, okay, that's my first choice, Edna Brewer's my first choice in scheduling the team game, I want to be able to go on there and kind of see if it's available before I kind of offer that time. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And the only way we're able to kind of view the time slots is when you submit those game requests.
Mm-hmm.
So here I selected Edna Brewer, and so it shows me what time slots are available. Let me kind of backtrack though, because we have submitted like quite a few test requests. And so when you're submitting requests for a field, you'll actually be able to see what has been requested or what is taken. And so here it'll show you, like for Bret Hart on this day, someone else has also requested the 9:10 time slot. So you can either still select it or select a different time slot, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But typically we do have a wide range of Jack London fields. So kind of going into, let me select the age range, see if it'll populate 9v9 fields. So within Jack London, as you can see, we have like a ton of different fields available. So although like you have a preferred field that you've selected,
Mm-hmm.
if that field isn't available for that specific time slot, the schedulers would select another Jack London field for that time slot, if that makes sense.
Okay. So just to clarify, when we are trying to choose a location for the games, we have to choose at least 3 choices. Is that correct?
You can choose up to 3.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, just as I'm kind of looking at, can you just show me again where I would go and kind of start this whole Sport Links thing? I think I missed just that beginning part.
Okay. So, you'll need to register
Yeah, I already
as the
did
team
that.
officials. Okay,
Mhm.
wonderful. And then after you've registered, when you log into SportLinks, your team name will be up in this top menu bar.
Yes, I see that.
So where it says My Teams is where
Mhm.
your team will be listed.
Yeah.
And then you'll click on your team. And then in order to submit the game request, you'll go down to where it says game requests on this left side
Got it.
menu,
Okay.
and then you'll click on the new game request button.
Okay. And then that way we
Mhm.
find the calendar. Okay, got you.
Yes.
Okay.
And then you would just select the game date that you and your opponent confirmed.
Mhm.
So let's say that in GOT Sport, you and your opponent had decided that this August 24th date, you guys were going to reschedule because someone has a tournament. So what you'll do is that when you submit the game requests, you won't mention anything in regards to a reschedule because SportLinks and Got Sport don't sync data. And so this information is invalid. And so you would just go ahead and select the date that you and your opponents had confirmed. You go ahead and select your preferred fields and your preferred kickoff times. And then you'll select your opponent. Again, if the opponent is not listed here, you're able to go in and add your opponent's name. And then any comments that you want to provide the scheduler, you can add here. And then you'll click save and it'll generate the submitted game request to this game request page for you to review.
Okay.
But like I said, it's very rare that you won't get a field and time slot that you've requested. Typically, I would say,
And then really quickly, my other question
Mhm.
is, now I know our coach has 4 other teams, um, or 3 other teams, sorry. Um, actually, never mind. I think I just answered my own question. Sorry.
No worries. And then also just to kind of note, if any of your coaches are a U8 development coach, technically that U8 development team doesn't necessarily have to take up its own column in the coach's shared doc. Because they don't have a regular fall league schedule, they only have play dates. Those can just be added as notations. So anyone who has a coach who is helping with the U8 development program, the play dates can just be added as notations instead of adding them as an actual team. And then again, so for the game requests, typically if you provide multiple options, they will be able to schedule at least one of your options. If a field is not, if one of your field options isn't available, they will still be able to take your kickoff times that you've requested and shift that to an open field. And then, like I said, it's very rare that you would be denied a time or a field assignment. But in the event that it happens, you would just go back into Got Sport and communicate with your opponents. And you might have opponents that have the same situation where there are field limitations and they weren't able to have a field assigned, and they'll pose the same question to you to see if you can go ahead and host the game. And so you would just kind of, rather than trying to figure out what is still available, you can submit the game request, or you can email the league admin, and then they can take a look on the back end to see if you hosting is a possibility. That way it speeds up the communication process a bit. That way you guys can check to see if like, okay, we're able to host, or if not, you guys can start that rescheduling process as soon as possible. Any questions in regards to the game requests? I know it's a lot of info.
Yeah, I just had one. So I just wanted to clarify in terms of when to start doing, you said something about how it wasn't open, but then it looks like we actually can do the request now, like when I'm looking my sport link. So if we have a game where we've heard back from the other team and they've confirmed that the time works for them, should we go ahead and request it, or we're waiting for a certain time?
You're waiting for a certain time. I have to check in with the schedulers to make sure that everything is good on their end. And then once they confirmed, I will send an email with the home scheduling process with the directions and letting us know like, okay, Jack London's ready for us to submit our home fields. Here are your instructions again. Here are your home fields, and here are your Jack London fields that are age appropriate for us to also request. That should be sometime next week. Once we've submitted all of our game requests, the schedulers will go into the system and add all of the games. They'll go over field utilization. They'll make sure that all of the games have been placed, and then they will go ahead and approve and publish. Typically, when they approve and publish, they'll go ahead and let me know. So then I will go ahead and send you another email to let you know that we are able to update our home games in Got Sport. And so then we'll be able to, that email will also include the step-by-step instructions, but I'll just go ahead and go over how that would look right now. So when Jack London lets us know that our games are approved and published, they typically send out a Sport Links confirmation for each game. But I tell team managers it's easier to just come back into Sport Links versus relying on those confirmations, because sometimes those confirmations, for some odd reason, some confirmation emails are sent out and others aren't. So it's easier to just go ahead and come back into Sport Links, go to your team page, and then go to where it says games. And all of your games that have been approved and published will be listed here. What you'll want to do is you'll want to take this information and update your Team Snap placeholders as well as your games on Got Sport. In order to update your games in Got Sport, rather than going into team management, you'll want to go to where it says team scheduling. You'll then select the event that you're working on. And here in the month view, you'll find your home games highlighted in blue. So in order to go to that home game, you don't want to try to click on this blue bar. It won't take you directly to that game. You'll want to actually click on the game date itself. And then your game will show up in the unassigned matches. You'll want to click on the hyperlink game number. This will then open up your game details. Here, you'll want to add the venue that was assigned to you in Sport Links. So here is the field or the venue, and then the field, and then the kickoff time. So here, if you realize that Jack London has assigned you a field that your club doesn't typically use, so it's not showing up in this venue list, you'll want to contact your club admin so that they can add that venue to the org list, and then they should be able to have it populate to the venue list. And then you'll be able to select the venue, select the field, and then team managers typically like to select scheduled when they're done with updating their home game. You can just go ahead and leave it as is. This isn't really too important. And then for the match date, that is the match date that you and your opponent had confirmed. So let's say this is a preliminary date that you and your opponent had confirmed to reschedule. So then you would just go through this month view and select the date that you and your opponent had agreed upon. And then the time is the kickoff time that was assigned to you in Sport Links. And then you'll just update that. You can leave the end time blank. Sport and NorCal, when you enter the start time, it will auto generate your game length according to your age group. And then once you click save, this then will pull your match from unassigned and up into this grid view. This little crossbar here allows you to drag and drop into this grid view. However, there are typically errors when individuals try to do the drag and drop. It doesn't sometimes place into the grid correctly for the correct time slots, and sometimes it's hard to have it drop into the correct field. If you are updating your game details and you aren't able to save because there is another game placed into your assigned time slot, then you're able to just hover over that game in this grid view, and it should open a detail box with which team is placed there. And I would just go ahead and screenshot that or take down that information and email your club admin so that they're able to go and research what's going on in the system. It's most likely that another team had utilized the drag and drop and accidentally dropped it into the wrong field. Another issue could be that someone had forgotten to go through the home scheduling process and skipped the step of submitting a game request, which is a big no-no. You definitely want to make sure that you submit your game requests, that your game requests are approved and show up in your games list. Once it's in your games list here, that means that that game is assigned to that specific field at that specific time. So no other team is able to reserve it. And so once you do receive, or once you do see your games populate to this games list, then you're able to put them into the system and update your home game details. Is there any questions? And then obviously, as you're updating your home game details here, as well as in your schedule on TeamSnap, you'll want to make sure that you update those details onto your coach's shared doc.
Evelyn, do our coaches and our assistant coaches need access to this Sport Links site? I'm just wondering, as team managers, is it our responsibility to make sure that they're registered into Sport Links?
They don't necessarily need to be registered to SportLinks. Only those who need access to the game requests, viewing the games and referee assignments will need to have access. And then again, it's just a matter of sharing that SportLinks team officials registration link, and then they can get themselves signed up. I do know that some coaches do like to have access. Some do help with the scheduling process, and so they're able to come in if needed. And then kind of going back into the game details being updated. So as your opponents are updating their game details, you're able to go into matches and see the game details here. And so you'll see the date, the time, and then the venue. The only downside to viewing your matches and your away game details through Got Sport is that if you are assigned a venue that you're not familiar with, you're not able to click on it to figure out the address. So I typically tell team managers that the best way to view your schedule is through that public link. Let me kind of go back, see if I can access that. Sorry. So again, this public link is updated in real time. So whenever there are changes made by yourself or the opponents through Got Sport, the times and dates will be updated, as well as the location here. The location here is hyperlinked, so it will provide you with the address. So this is typically the easiest way to kind of get those game details for your away games. And again, if you have a co-team manager or someone that helps you with TeamSnap, this is the best view for them to update those other areas. Any questions regarding updated game schedules?
Sorry, Evelyn, can you show one more time how you got to the addresses for the, on that? I missed it quickly doing something else on the, in
okay.
Godsport.
So in Got Sport, I was mentioning that when you go to matches, and once your game details are being updated by yourself and your opponents, your matches will then show the dates, times, and venues. But within Got Sport, it's a bit more difficult to get the address for these venues within Got Sport. So as I was saying, the easiest way is that public schedule link that I provided with the preliminaries
Okay,
schedule.
got it.
So this public link, one, you're also able to review like standings. So you're able to click on that so that you're able to see where you land in the bracket. But for your schedule itself, oops, let me scroll back. Here you'll be able to see, and like I said, this is updated in real time. So any changes made within Got Sport by yourselves for your home games or your opponents for the away games will be updated in real time. So dates and times will be updated here, and then locations will have a hyperlink so that you are able to get the exact address if it's a venue that you aren't familiar with.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. And typically during the scheduling process, again, throughout the communications that are done within this week, almost all of your games should be confirmed with your opponents during this next few days. And then on rare occasions, there might be, you might receive like communications that there needs to be a reschedule, maybe the team got sick or there is a school event and a lot of the kids are at the same school, and so they'll need to reschedule. And obviously, they'll provide that communication with you within Got Sport. And then it's again just going back into your coach's doc, making a notation that, you know, a game needs to be rescheduled. Typically at that time, when that happens, your schedules are already confirmed anyways. And so you're just making a notation that, okay, this game needs to be rescheduled. And then you do have an easier view of what what is available once all of your coaches' teams start to confirm their game details um after you know that they've received that their home games have been approved and everything is updated in Got Sport. Another thing about communications I forgot to mention is that all of your communications need to be done within Got Sport. If ever you receive an email outside of Got Sport or a call or a text, you can go ahead and communicate with them, but then just let them know or come back into Got Sport and create that new message. And then in the text box, just go ahead and note like, oh, as per our conversation by phone, this is what we discussed and this is what we agreed upon, and then save. And the reason why you want to have all of the communication done through Got Sport is so that everything is documented, especially if there's any disputes in the scheduling and NorCal needs to intervene. So just make sure all communications are documented in Got Sport. The only time that it's acceptable for you to communicate outside of the platform is if there is a rainout. And in order to get their contact information, when you open the chat function, it's usually listed, your opponent's contact info is usually listed in this box right above the chat. And then you're able to just go ahead and communicate if your field was rained out and the game was canceled. You'll just call them the morning of, and then in the message, you guys would just go ahead and start the rescheduling process.
Evelyn, this is Alice. Do you get notice when someone responds to your message or when it through Got Sport, or do you just have to regularly check it?
You do
Check that page.
receive an email that's from Got Sport, and I think the subject should be Got Sport comment. And in that email, it doesn't necessarily tell you what team, it will tell you what the game number is. So you're at least able to kind of take a look at what
Okay.
game number that was in that email and then
Yeah.
come back to the chat. But typically during the this busy time of everyone communicating with each other, I just come back frequently to just take a look at every chat and see where we are in confirming the game details.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then once the season does get going, you should still, like, if ever a team does need to communicate something, you will receive that got sport comment in your email, which then lets you know that someone has sent you a message. In regards to game details being updated by your for your away games, there aren't any notifications sent when the game details are updated. So typically, I have PTSD from one time where the game details were set, and then we showed up to the field, and it was like 30 minutes to kick off, 30 or 15 minutes to kick off. And we were like, where's our opponents? And then I received a phone call and was like, oh, we had to change the fields last minute. And so the system didn't alert me of that, of any sort of field changes or changes in the schedule. And so I typically tell team managers to always just kind of check back on their public link, see what's going on with their schedule, to make sure that the game details haven't changed for those away games. Just because there isn't any sort of notification that we get. You might have an opponent who's kind enough to realize that there isn't any notifications in the system for changes, and they will just go ahead and send you a chat to let you know. But just as to be cautious, and I typically will just go back and take a look on Fridays just to make sure everything looks good before that game day. Um, Speaking of which, for fields or game changes, it is a rarity to happen for Jack London, but if there is ever an issue where something happened with the field permits, with the school, or yeah, something happened where the field owners need to take back the permits. Let's say they have like a school event or something that they need the field for. Then what will happen is that Jack London will send you a message to let you know that they will need to shift the field to, or your game to, a different field. They'll typically let you know if it is a lateral move, and let you know what those game details are. So you're able to keep the same time, or on a different field, or that they need to shift the game a bit earlier or a bit later, depending on field availabilities. But in the event that happens where due to field permit issues, the game needs to be changed. If it's not a lateral move, well, one, if it's a lateral move, you can just go ahead and update the game details in team scheduling, and then go ahead and send a message to your opponent letting them know that the field had changed. If you were notified by Jack London that it isn't going to be a lateral move and it might have to shift like 30 minutes before or after your original kickoff time, then the courtesy thing would just be to message your opponent to let them know that they're, due to a field issue, this game had to be shifted to a different field, and the time may have shifted a bit, and to let them know. And then if that shift doesn't work for them, then you would have to go through like a rescheduling process. But typically when that happens, they're pretty flexible, since it's only 30-minute shifts. And then obviously if that was to happen, you would just also make sure to update your coach's shared document and make that notation that there was a shift due to permit issues. Any questions? Kind of moving into game day management. I know that in the beginning of July, I did send you all an email with the status for all of your team officials as well as the status of your players. I will be sending another round of emails this weekend. Just to let you know what's going on with any of the players that are missing from your roster, as well as your staff member. But let me kind of back up and show you where you guys are able to access those documents. For Clippers, you do need to create your own team binders. For Piedmont, your club admin will create those team binders and those coaches binders for you. And then they will schedule a pickup location before the season begins. In order to access those team documents, you would want to go to team. You'll then select your team name, go to rosters, and then click on the NorCal Premier 24-25 US Club registration. Here, you'll also want to make sure that you update the jersey numbers. That way, it's saved in the system, and then for all of your team's events, this will then populate to those rosters. So you won't have to add them on individually. Here is where you'll go to Documents and IDs. And then you're able to click IDs for the passes, the US Club roster, and the US Club R002 medical waivers. So the medical waivers do carry over year to year. So you might see some dates from 2021. So that is okay. The only time that it would change is if there was any updates to the medical waivers, like the policy or address and such. You'll want to review all of the waivers to make sure that there is a signature. If there isn't, you can go ahead and place this into your team manager binder and then have the parents sign it at either a practice or a game. That way there is a signature for these waivers. And then the digital signatures are good to go. This document, the US Club roster, you'll want to make sure that this is also in your binder. As you're reviewing your team documents, this is probably the easiest view. These pictures are the same as your ID. Apologies, my Frenchie is making a lot of noise. But again, from this roster, this is the exact same photos and information that is listed in your IDs. So if you want to take a look at your roster to see who's missing, as well for staff as well as players, you'll also want to make sure that players have headshot photos. So for example, this player, that will need to be cropped so that it's a headshot. Obviously, for the team officials who are missing here, just remind them to go back into their GOT Sport. And then when they go into their GOT Sport and it takes them directly to their dashboard, they're able to look to see which US club requirements have not yet been fulfilled. Let's say that they have completed their safe sport, but it's still saying that it's required or expired. They can go into the details, and then in the bottom, they can check records. This should then populate their latest record in the system. And a lot of times it will change the status to approved, and then automatically switch them to fulfilled. If for some odd reason it's still not able to find the data, they're able to grab their complete on their certificate. There is like a code that they're able to input here, and it should populate the record. But again, I did send out those team official memos at the beginning of July. So all team officials should have started working on their credentials. So there is no excuse for coaches or assistant coaches to be like, oh, I didn't know that I had those requirements, because they can obviously just go back into their profile and make sure that their US club requirements are completed. This is especially important for your head coaches, especially if they're new and are coming from the UK. Their background check is a two-part process for the international background checks, and those may take some time. And I know last season there was some issues where those background checks weren't completed in a timely manner, and so those coaches did not have their coach cards for the kickoff of the season. So it's very important that we go ahead and get those credentials taken care of so that coaches are able to be on the sideline for all of our games. Any questions?
Evelyn, my question is, and I don't know if this is if I missed this part, but like our managers and coaches, our US cards weren't good to go when you did the first round. Since then, 3 out of the 4 of us are good to go. Where do we find our cards now to print and have them with everything?
Yes. So I went through yesterday to refresh all of the teams. So hopefully everyone who has completed their credentials are now showing. You'll be able to go to from team management, go to teams, and then go down to your team name, click on rosters, and then you'll want to click on NorCal Premier 24-25 US Club Registration. And then here, you'll find the documents and IDs. If they're still not populating, like I said, just have them. I typically will just look at the roster because that's the same as your IDs, same information as your IDs. So if you do see that you're missing anyone, any of those staff members can go back to their dashboard and take a look. If for some odd reason it's just not populating correctly, they can go ahead and contact myself or the registrar, preferably the registrar, because I'm doing a lot of the other season prep work. So if they can inquire about their staff pass, the status of it with the registrar, that would be great. I am, as I mentioned, working on sending out follow-up emails to teams who still have officials or players missing in the system. I did send a bunch of emails and reminders about proof of birth directly to players from Got Sports. So that took some of the stress from you guys in trying to connect with families, because I know a lot of families have been traveling and are on vacation. So I went ahead and did that for you guys to help expedite. And so I think for both clubs, I'm still missing like a handful of players. So I will go ahead and let you know. Unfortunately, without the proof of birth, either being a birth certificate or a passport, without that being verified by US Club, US Club will not generate a player pass for those players. And so it's very important for us to go ahead and get those documents to US Club for us to get them a valid pass. And then again, like I said, I will send out an email for those teams to let them know if those players are missing. Um,
So Evelyn, if I'm looking at my roster and I don't see my coach or either of my assistant coaches, that
mhm.
means that the three of them have not completed.
Something is still missing in their credentials. And so they just have to go into their dashboard to take a look.
Okay.
Yes. And then once your full roster of players has been populated to the ID cards, I will go ahead and upload your team document to the team manager's media folder for US club passes. So like right now for Clippers, I have 19 teams who have their full player rosters. So there were no issues with generating player passes for those teams. And so they're all set and ready to go. And this is also like a great resource for if you have guest players that will be joining you for your games. And so instead of waiting for the loaning team, their coach or their team manager to provide you with that player's card, you're able to come into this media folder and find their pass. And by finding their pass, you're then able to add them as guest players in GOT Sport for your games. Kind of going over guest players and match cards. So for your home games, you do need to print out, I would print out like 2 copies of your match cards. Sometimes they're called game cards. For those home games, typically you are able to print them 24 hours prior to the game. So a lot of times people will print them out like the night before, but I typically tell team managers it's best to print them the morning of your game, just because you want to make sure that the match card does capture any last minute guest players who have been added to the roster by your opponents. So in order to access your match card, so let's say you don't have any guest players that you're adding to the game. You can come into team management, click on matches, and then go to, obviously you would sort by team and then event and then search. And then here you'll want to go to where the 3 dots are underneath the dialog bubble and then print match card. Let me actually find a previous season. Give me 1 second. That way you guys can see what that looks like. So this is what your match cards will look like. They'll have your team names on the top. All of the staff and players who have a valid US Club Pass will populate to your match card. If you do add on a guest player, they will be highlighted in orange and will have a CP next to their name. So in order to add guest players, you'll want to go to Teams, click on your team name. You'll go to Team Registrations, and then you'll go to select the event that we're working on. But I'm going to select a past event so that you can see what it looks like. You'll click on Schedule. And then you'll click on the roster button on the row of the game that you're adding a guest player to. I know it's a lot of clicking. Don't worry about taking any notes because I will provide you with the game day management email with all of this information. So here you're able to go ahead and add a club pass player. You'll want to add the player by first and last name according to what is listed on their ID. And then add their date of birth, search, and then it should populate the player's profile that you can add to the event roster. Once you add the player, they will be listed as a guest player for your event. So they will always populate to your default roster. For your age groups, I think there shouldn't be any issues with adding a few guest players. I believe the cutoff on these match cards are 26. So I don't think most of your age groups will hit 26 players on your event roster, but in the event that you do have quite a few guest players in your roster, as well as your primary players, and it is exceeding 26, you'll want to come into the game day rosters and update who will be attending. Just because the match cards will cut off at 26, and that means that if you have any players whose last name are towards the end of the alphabet, they may get cut off. And so just to ensure that those players who are attending and are towards the end of the alphabet will get added to the match card, you'll just want to make sure to set the attending. Any questions in regards to match cards and guest players? I also want to note that if you are adding any last minute guest players for your team for an away game, let's say all of a sudden your coach double checked and quite a few players are calling in sick and they were able to secure a couple guest players the morning of, you'll want to make sure that you get them added, and then you'll want to print out that match card for that away game, just so that those last minute guest players that were added can be captured on the latest printout. And of course, they would be captured in your printout. So you're able to just go ahead and bring that match card to that away game. Let me actually kind of also backtrack in regards to your IDs. You'll want to make sure that these IDs are cut into the ID size. You can see where like the dotted lines are for where you can cut them. These should not be printed as whole sheets. They should be cut and then laminated into kind of like the business size IDs, and then you'll be able to hole punch them in the right corner, and then you should have them stacked in alphabetical order by last name, so that it'll be easy for the referee to flip through them, because the match card will list the players alphabetically by last name as well. So that will make it easier for the referees to check in your players. I know for Montclair, there might be questions in regards to how many sets you should have made. For the passes, I would say that you should have at least 3, one for the coach, one for the assistant coach, and one for the team manager. In regards to the roster and medical waivers, I would create 2 binders. And then one binder would be for the head coach, and then one would be with the team manager. If you have a laminator, I would say that you can purchase the business size laminating pouches, and then you're able to go ahead and get that done at home. If you don't have a laminator, you can bring these documents to FedEx or the Lakeshore Learning Center to have them laminate for you there. Team managers have asked about the expense to making these team binders. You can save the receipts and submit your receipts to your treasurer for reimbursement out of the team funds. Any questions regarding team binders and game day management? Let me see. In regards to rainout and AQI protocol, I would say that Jack London typically will let us know the morning of game days, if there are any fields that are rained out. And so typically around 6:30 in the morning, they will update their website as well as the SportLinks landing page. So you'll be able to see the announcement, but I will typically go ahead and send an email, or not an email, I'm sorry. I'll send a chat message the morning of to let you guys know that which fields are rained out and which ones are still good to go. Typically, the turf fields will always play on as long as there's no standing water and there's no lightning, then those would just go ahead and play on as is. And then grass fields is just dependent on how well they're draining. They'll go ahead and let us know. But I know like in the past, if it's been raining throughout the week, there's always that worry of like, oh, is it going to get canceled? And there's kind of like this panic of waiting for Jack London to let us know. And so we typically say don't try to cancel and reschedule a game prior to receiving the notification from the league. Just because, like I said, depending on field conditions, some grass can go ahead and play on. And then same thing for turf. Typically we play on turf, rain or shine. In regards to lightning, or heavy storms, typically from what I've known in the past is that if fields are good to go, and referees are good to go, the games play on. If like there's lightning or hail, or the conditions change while at the field and it becomes unsafe to play, then the referee will call the game as is. And so those, again, if you didn't receive a rain out notification that says your game is specifically canceled for these fields, you do have to show up to the field regardless of what the weather is looking like. Any questions? No? Okay. And then in regards to inputting scores, you are able to come back into Got Sport, go into your team management, click on matches, and then click on the 3 dots and update the match stats. And you would get the final score from the match card that the referee had signed off on. So you would just go ahead and copy that information and then click save. Also, another way is on the match cards, there is a QR code on this top right hand. You're able to scan that with your phone, and then you'll just need to input the PIN or the event code and the event PIN, and then you're able to look for the match. And then you're able to input the score according to what is on this match card. And that is pretty much it for game day management. I think I've covered it all. Oh, referee assignments. I know that sometimes that is something that team managers worry about. So for your referee assignments, you're able to see them in your game list on SportLinks. So when you go to your game list, right now the pay structure hasn't been set for fall, but once it is open and set, you'll have referee slots available in this right bottom corner under game card. And it'll say CR needed for 7v7. Typically only one referee is needed. And then for 9v9, you'll have the CR plus 2 ARs. And so if your referee assignment has been fulfilled, there will be a person's name listed there. If not, it'll say needed. You'll want to check in with your team to see who are your affiliated refs on the team. So those can be parents, and those could also be siblings who have gone through the referee training. And let's say you check here on Friday and notice that there isn't a referee assigned to your game. You can go ahead and let your affiliated refs know that they may need to bring their kit just in case. I wouldn't freak out entirely and see that like, oh, I've had team managers who were like, oh, I'm checking this morning game, like morning of game, and there's no referee assignment. Do I cancel the game? That is a no. You don't cancel the game because there is a high possibility that a referee will just go ahead and show up to the game to officiate. And then there's also a possibility that your team affiliated ref can go ahead and fill in and officiate the game as well. If you do show up to the field and your team affiliated ref is not able to officiate the game, or no one ends up showing up at last minute, the coaches would then talk to each other about what the next steps are. Typically, depending on the coaches and the opponents, they may just go ahead and say, let's play on as is, or they might say that officially this will be a forfeit according to the NorCal rules. And so they could just decide to not play and take the forfeit, or they could play it as a scrimmage, but the score would just the official score would be the 3-0. Any questions in regards to referee assignments or that process of waiting for referees to show up? No. I'm trying to think of anything else I'm missing, but that is pretty much it. So I went over all of the scheduling process, and then the majority of the game day management. If you have any questions, I could take them now. If not, that is pretty much the end of the training session. And again, you will receive emails for the next steps. The next step will be the home scheduling process within SportLinks. So if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and register as a team official. And then you're just confirming with your opponents at this time and then waiting for that next step. And we're done. If you have any questions, I'll stay on.
Thanks, Evelyn. Bye.
Thank you. You'll
Thank you,
hear
Evelyn.
more from me. You'll hear
Bye.
any more from me as we go through.
Thanks,
Talk to
Evelyn.
you later.
Can I
Bye.
ask a question, Evelyn?
Oh yeah, of course.
Miriam, I'm so sorry. I'm a new
Okay.
manager. I actually don't know if I have 4 kids and a full-time professor job. I don't know if I could keep up with the scheduling because I'll just miss so many emails.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna talk to Guy something. He's the co-man.
Okay, yes, yes.
So I'm hoping to do that because this volume exceeds my capacity, quite
Yeah.
frankly. So,
No,
but
I get it.
Yeah, no, it's just way too much and they just put more projects on my job. But my question is, what at the very basic level, I'm already getting Got Sport messages
Yes.
from other
Your-
teams.
Mhm.
And they're asking, on this date, can we such and such? You've done such an elegant job explaining so many complex systems. I'm just also at a loss right now to wrap my head around like where to start. So I could go into Gotsport. I saw the message.
Mhm.
I have I have Coach Sarah King, and we
Yes.
have a manager who is very experienced here, Hillary Collins. She's already done the spreadsheet. So
Yeah.
what do I do while the co-manager is trying to get his feet wet? I don't think he's attended any of these sessions. What do we do in the interim as I'm getting all these messages and we're trying to figure out even just learning how to schedule games?
Yes. So I would say the very first step is just kind of looking at those messages, or actually, first step would be, has Sarah assigned you guys to a designated time slot for game days?
Um, I, what does that mean? So I have,
The
Uh,
coach shared doc?
yes. So Hillary Collins did make a shared doc.
Okay.
So I don't know. Let me see. And I just honestly opened it for the first time today. That's yeah, I mean, God bless you all. I mean, I was a PTA president last year, and even this level of admin is not my strength. I do that job in a heartbeat in comparison to all this stuff. I'll deal with angry parents over this. Yes, I do. So I opened Coach Sarah's document. I do see dates. I
Mhm.
do see tournaments. Um, Tahoe.
On the top 3 rows, it should say
mhm.
which team is assigned to where. So I don't.
What do you mean is assigned to where? I mean, I could share my screen.
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. And then we can kind of walk you through. Give me 1 second. Let me actually stop.